a soul, but it takes someone to come around to show you how. She's the tear in my heart. I'm alive. She's the tear in my heart. I'm on fire. She's the tear in my heart. Take me higher than I've ever been. The songs on the radio are okay, but my taste in music is your face. And it takes a song to come around to show you how. She's the tear in my heart. I'm alive. She's the tear in my heart. I'm on fire. She's the tear in my heart. Take me higher than I've ever been. Than I've ever been. Than I've ever been. Than I've ever been. You fell asleep in my car. I drove the whole time.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take a seat. Our program will resume momentarily. Thank you.
I'm driving here, I sit, cursing my government for not using my taxes to fill holes with more cement. You fell asleep in my car, I drove the whole time, but that's okay, I'll just avoid the holes so you sleep fine. I'm driving here, I sit, cursing my government for not using my taxes to fill holes with more cement. Sometimes you gotta bleed to know, that you're alive and have a soul, but it takes someone to come around to show you how. She's the tear in my heart. I'm alive. She's the tear in my heart. I'm on fire. She's the tear in my heart. Take me higher than I've ever been. My heart is my armor. She's a tear in my heart. She's a carver. She's a butcher with a smile. Cut me farther than I've ever been. Than I've ever been. Than I've ever been. Oh, than I've ever been. My heart is my armor. She's the tear in my heart. She's a carver. She's a butcher with a smile. Cut me farther than I've ever been.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back Stuart Rogers.
There's my fan club over there, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't... Woo! You would not believe how much money that cost me. So thank you for coming back so promptly. We have a slight change in the running order. Ironically, Uber are not here in time, but they will be here. Maybe there's artificial intelligence that could help them out with that. So we're going to start with our showcases. Now, our showcases, if you remember, are where we have handpicked people to come up for 5 minutes and show you the latest and greatest that they are working on and give you some inspiration, give you some things to maybe try tomorrow. So without further ado, we'd like to get our first showcase up here. Welcoming Sam Vasisht, co-founder and CEO of Magia AI. Please give him a warm round of applause.
Good morning. Another beautiful Mill Valley day. I think Matt actually conspired with nature to make sure that weather's like this so everybody stays indoors and attends these sessions. I'm Sam Vasisht, as was just mentioned. I want to clarify, I'm the CMO and co-founder of Magia. But in any event, We are a relatively new company, just a couple of years old, venture-backed, and we're building conversational interfaces for retail selling. And when we started this company, I had already exited from two conversational interface companies. And I said, I can't do this again. But then we looked at sort of the landscape, and I realized that over the last 7 or 8 years, the first company that we built conversational interface was in 2011 or 2012. And in the last 7 or 8 years, really not that much has changed in terms of the core technologies that are being adopted to build conversational interfaces. And we wanted to push the boundaries a little bit further and sort of do a high-wire act in terms of what can be done with conversational interfaces. So that's what resulted in Magia. And let me elaborate on the point I made about in terms of the technologies. So if you look at where conversational interfaces today are performing well and good solutions have been delivered, it's in areas such as customer support, travel booking, and pizza ordering. And I applaud the companies that have built these. These are complex solutions to build. They're not trivial. And these companies have definitely done a good job and brought the sort of roll the ball forward. But when you really get down to sort of the basics, these types of solutions are doing something very, very simple in some ways. Let me elaborate. So for customer support, essentially you start with unstructured data, you convert it to structured data, and then the challenge that you solve is one of information retrieval. In the case of travel booking, it's basically a slot filling exercise. You have a small number of slots, maybe half a dozen to a dozen slots. Once you fill those slots, voila, you've got your result that you wanted, such as booking a flight. And then for pizza ordering, same thing. It's a slot filling exercise. You fill the slots, and you can define the pizza that you want to get. So the common thing across all these types of solutions is that they rely on users articulating their needs fully and predictably. So a user comes in, they know exactly what they want, they can state it in a certain predetermined way, and now you're able to execute on a conversational interface experience. Most of us who shop at retail, and I'm not talking about shopping for groceries or reordering paper towels and things like that, but when you shop at retail, it's a far more complicated experience or process. So first of all, there's dozens of slots to be filled. Any complicated product you want to buy, whether it be electronics, wearables, automotive, anything like that, there's probably 50 different things that people can choose from. Most of us don't care about those 50 things. You might care about 3 of them. I might care about a different 3, and so on and so forth. So you're never going to get a complete slot, get all the slots filled, essentially. So as a result, shoppers are also uninformed what they're looking for. When you go to buy a complex product, chances are you have a notion of a few things that you want, but as you get into the discovery mode, you're going to find there are certain things that that can't work together, so you change your mind about certain things, or you ask questions, you learn more, and you sort of go through this discovery process. And so the shopping journey is usually a meandering process. I think we've all experienced that. So what Magia is trying to do is to work within the constraints of these partial inputs, changing considerations, and complex context patterns. So that's sort of the challenge that we're trying to solve, and I think we've got our hands around it now. So there's 3 parts to our what we call virtual sales assistants. The first one is we build deep domain knowledge, and this domain knowledge is built a domain at a time. That's the only way we can do this. So we go really deep into every domain, but the way we build this knowledge base is not simply collecting all the information, but really being able to access this information in a very random way. So we can bounce around in this knowledge base and pick up or conduct searches or search results in very creative and random ways. The second thing we've done is a generic NLU optimization. So this is retail specific. In other words, it's not a domain specific NLU optimization, it's retail specific. So for example, on our platform, the term wine for steak is the same as TV for PS4. It's agnostic in terms of what the product we're talking about. At the same time, it knows that something like wine with steak is not the same thing as TV with Roku. I guess you all know the difference, right? In one case, it's wine that goes with steak. TV with Roku means Roku's built into the TV. It's a feature of the TV. So these are the kind of things we've done with NLU. And the third thing is what we call a brain that can manage multiple contexts. So as shoppers go through this discovery process, they're going to start adding on contexts. You start with 3, suddenly you've got 5, 6, 7 different considerations, all of which don't work together. We have to figure out a way to resolve those, either by ourselves, trading one for the other, or helping a shopper basically make more intelligent choices. So typically we build a domain in 3 months or so, or a few months, and then once that's done, we can basically onboard customers within a matter of days or weeks, given that everything else has been taken care of in terms of training the system. So in summary, the first domain we've launched is for wine. And the reason for that is that everybody buys wine, but most people are actually not very well informed about wine. We either punt on it or just buy something that we bought before or go by somebody's recommendation. So we thought wine was a good domain. It's also actually a very complicated domain when you start tackling it from a technical perspective. It's been deployed as a chatbot, and if I have time, I'll show you a demo. I think I do have time. It's still early days. I can say we're good. We're certainly not perfect, and we'll get there, but it's not there today. And when I say we're good, we get about a 20% engagement, which I thought was pretty low, but based on some conversations I've had, it seems to be a decent number, given that most live chat interactions are 1 or 2%. And we get about a 20 to 40% conversion on some of our early customers of this 20% engagement. So with that, if I have time, and I think I do, I'll show you a quick demo. Caveat on the demo, given that everything happens dynamically at the back, I have no way of knowing what kind of response is going to come back when I pose a question. So I'm going to be as surprised as you with what comes back. I'll try and walk you through the explanation of those to the extent I can. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually try to do some very squirrely queries as opposed to doing some generic queries just to show you that it works. I'll do some where there's some conflict created in the interest of time. That'll give you an idea of sort of what I've been talking about in terms of how we thought about this. So this is a customer website. You can check it out at some point if you like. And I have written these queries down because they were sort of counterintuitive to me. And I've blown up the site so that you can see the bot, but it does limit what you see on the web page. So I'm going to start with something really simple. Full-bodied Napa red wine to go with steak. Let's say for $100. So that's, somebody who's fairly specific about what they're looking for might come in and type something like that. Can you all see that? And I think I have a network problem here. You guys know if I have internet? Let me refresh this and see what happens. Okay, sorry guys. Looks like we might be network limited. I could keep trying, but I think I'll let the next speaker come on. If anybody needs to see the demo, we can do it offline, or you can check out the site yourself. It's argonautliquor.com. It is a working site. Thank you very much.
Okay, the money that I gave my fan club, could you go and put that in the meter to feed the internet, please? Thank you. So let's move on to our next showcase. And this time, we're going to have John Gagnon, Head of Business Development at Bidalgo, come and bedazzle you. John, please, could you join the stage?
Girls, what y'all trying to do? 24-karat magic in the air.
All right. Thank you, Stuart. Good to be here. I'm John from Bidalgo. And I'm here to talk to you today about how AI is disrupting your digital media spend. At Bidalgo, we are actually applying AI to performance marketing. And there we go. Okay. So before I get started, just real quick survey of the room. Who here knows for sure that your organization is spending big ad dollars on paid marketing on Facebook? Raise your hand. Plenty of hands are raised. Okay, keep those hands up though for me. People who don't have their hands raised, let me ask you, are you spending on Google? Do you know, are you guys spending on Google? Raise your hand. Yeah, okay. Almost 100% of the crowd raised their hand on that one. In case you don't know why everyone spends on these channels, I think it's super important to understand why. First of all, they have the highest quality traffic. And they also have tremendous scale. So the use case, you can spend huge budgets here, but it's difficult to do. If you don't get your bids and budgets right and everything, you can have a very poor ad experience in terms of the revenue that returns to you. You don't want to go through that, and maybe some of you guys have experienced that. So what I'm talking to you today about is that you need to get this performance, and this is exactly Bidalgo's mission. So our mission, we want to be the ultimate solution for paid marketing on these high-quality, highly scaled channels. We're an API direct marketing partner for Facebook, Instagram, Google, Snapchat, Apple Search, and Pinterest. These are all API integrated into our platform, and they're all powered by AI. It's very, very exciting stuff. When I say powered by AI, I think this is an AI conference. I think it's super important I qualify this and really dig into it, explain exactly what I mean. So Bidalgo, I think we're a unique company. We're 8 years old. We've been using machine learning for a very long time. Our philosophy and our approach to AI is that it's not enough that we just bring you data and insights. We want to give you your end result, your business goal, your revenue target. We want to deliver that. And the only way to do that is to go all the way to execution. So I'm happy to say we've been able to do that. We're looking at now Bidalgo AI's dashboard here. It's a fully automated media buying and optimization solution that requires no human effort or intervention to reach that revenue KPI. It's as simple as bringing up the interface, typing in your daily budget, uploading your creatives, setting that revenue KPI target, and letting the AI handle it for you. We believe we're the only company to apply AI to the full funnel of performance marketing, fully automated. Best of all, Bidalgo AI, since it's been around for a while now, it's already handled hundreds of millions of dollars of ad spend. So we feel like it's proven at scale to be an industrial strength technology. The market response has been incredible, really. We're very fortunate. We're working with the leading edge companies that have performance marketing at their core of their business. For these partners, when it comes to having the strongest optimization platform, Bidalgo is their solution and their close partner. And these close partners drive our product and engineering roadmap as well. So that's where we draw from to identify pain points and market needs that can benefit from our AI. And today, I'm really excited to tell you about our newest product that's recently been launched. It's called Creative AI. So the one piece of the media buying puzzle that has never been touched by AI is the actual creatives themselves, the images and the videos that are generated by a human designer. The biggest problem we saw from our partners was actually that they could be producing a large volume of creatives, but still their A/B testing methodologies would show that most of their creatives didn't work at all. They were underperforming. And it's a very, very common problem. Across the board, we see it. And everyone has the same desire. They all want to know and they want to understand, how can I produce better creatives? So that's why we created Creative AI. Here's a look at it right here. You simply connect all of your existing ad accounts. It pulls in all your historical data. And then it uses AI to run deep analysis on all the assets that are contained within it. So let me walk you through a couple of quick examples, really simple examples of the output of Creative AI. So let's say real quick that you have a game company, and maybe you have a game similar to Candy Crush, something like Bidalgo Blitz here, our example game. This is what one of your ad creatives might look like. You run this through Creative AI, and it starts with image recognition. So this is where it gets pretty exciting. Bidalgo AI uses image recognition to actually identify the concepts contained within the images and videos, and then it starts to identify them everywhere they exist. Once it's done with image recognition, it actually runs through a deep learning process where it actually goes through and finds these concepts everywhere they exist in all the images and all the videos. And it aggregates all this data together. So concepts that are found to have enough statistical significance can then be assigned an impact score, and that's an impact on revenue. That's really important. Creative AI can actually tell you what concepts have the highest correlation to actual revenue. And this is kind of like leapfrogging and jumping past all the methodical A/B testing that has already been done for years, straight to insights results. One of the other exciting outputs of the deep learning analysis is that we actually have aggregated and identified the best performing color palettes across the entire creative library. The analysis even comes complete with the hex codes that you would need to place into Photoshop or After Effects to change the color palettes of your creatives. Pretty exciting stuff. You can kind of imagine where this is heading if you were to apply this in your organization. I don't have time to go into everything that Creative AI can do today, but if you think this seems interesting and that your organization could benefit from a solution like this, be happy to meet you for a 10-minute demo today just outside and walk you through the entire demo. AI is really exciting for Bidalgo because we're already reaping the benefits from our investment in this technology, and we're really happy to be able to show it to you today. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. So we're going to get into our fireside chat with Jay Ranganathan, the Director of Product at Uber. And interviewing him, we will have, once again, founder and CEO of VentureBeat, Mr. Matt Marshall. Please welcome him to the stage.
Yeah, please.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll be nice and comfy.
Thank you.
So thanks for joining us. I'm going to rub this in again. Stuart already talked about the irony of the only person late for one of our conversations is Uber, the Amazon of transportation. Wait, were you taking a scooter from like?
I have no excuses.
Well, look, thanks. So look, I'm really excited about this conversation specifically because Uber. When I was talking with Jay, it was of all the companies over the last day and a half. Uber seems to have all the applications running, right? In terms of these buckets that I talked about in the opening morning, there's really only about 5 or 6 buckets of applications when it comes to the front end. So Uber, when I was talking with Jay, just explicitly listed those applications. I think it was the only conversation in prep where you had actually done that. We're going to get to a slide, I think, and go over that eventually. But also on the back end, right? So not even just this front end agenda, but estimated time of arrival, again, to rub it in again. Right?
Yep.
They've reduced,
We've got some work to do there.
reduced the error rate there, anti-fraud in terms of payments. So excited to get started. So Jay, tell us a little bit about where you're most, again, now focusing on that front office agenda, right? Touching the consumer side. What are you most excited about in terms of ROI on the AI side?
Sure. So as you mentioned, we use AI dramatically across all parts of our application. I've been working on a bunch of different interfaces and areas where we are using it. One of the most recent big successes we've had is actually in our customer support systems. We've built out quite a bit of work around everything from intent discovery, routing to the best support agent possible, giving support agents information how best to answer a question based on what the question's about. And we did this all fairly rapidly given this proliferation of deep learning technologies that are available right now. And we're seeing like pretty dramatic gains across, like you can think of like usually when you make one of these applications, you're often trading one thing off against another. In this case, we had like a 10% improvement in our efficiency of our support reps. We had much faster time to resolution of our issues. And at the same time, our customer satisfaction, which we measure very closely for every one of these support tickets, actually went up. Interesting thing here was the fact that very quickly, computers were actually able to do a better job than the humans did when they had to do everything manually. Here, the computers are augmenting the humans. So it often says, hey, we think this issue is of this nature. What do you think of using this reply? And the human then still decides whether that's the right thing to do or not. And just doing this action has improved the human accuracy involved in answering these questions. So it was just like winning in every dimension for us. Our customers are happier, our people are more efficient, and things are getting resolved quicker. So that was just a great victory for us recently in our customer support domain.
Yeah, great. So you've got so many of these wins, right? Can you assess the impact of AI, since you have a good position overseeing AI overall, assess the impact of AI on the business in some way in terms of the overall Uber business top line? I mean, you're talking about more efficiency, so presumably there's some cost benefits as well.
Of course.
In terms of the overall impact of AI on the business?
Yeah, I'm not going to quote a hard number or anything like that, but I can tell you the domains in which it's highly applicable for us. So at the end of the day, Uber is a marketplace business. The core of what we do is make sure to match riders and drivers appropriately. AI is used extensively in this process to make sure we find the most efficient match, the most price efficient for both the rider and the driver. And that's just such a fundamental part of our business that I can't even overstate the amount of impact it has from that perspective alone. But that's like one of those like crown jewel type things. The way we use machine learning and AI is pervasive across every department in our business. We use it in fraud and risk. We use it in things like customer segmentation, customer churn. We use it in our marketing efforts. I think the previous gentleman was talking about how they're using AI to optimize marketing spend. We do this extensively in-house. So there's very few parts of our business where we don't use AI. Even things like finance, how we allocate budget across different departments, AI is involved in that process because we need to understand the response curves for different ways in which you spend money and figure out how to most efficiently distribute that money. All of this has AI components participating in that process. Summing up across all of these things, I can't tell you exactly what the overall impact is, but I can tell you for sure that it's like something that we don't even think about anymore. It's like, well, I don't think about what the impact of a computer is because it's just given that it's there underneath.
Right.
It's kind of like that at this point for us with machine learning and AI.
Yeah. Yeah, so Tom, Pinkney, one of the executives at eBay who was speaking yesterday, framed it in the order of over $1 billion, a quarter of gross sales that are brought in by AI that wouldn't have otherwise been brought in. And they're not even thinking about it either. It's just so impactful. Uber's got to be on the same order, right?
Exactly.
Magnitude.
It's the same order of magnitude.
We can get to Uber Eats and some of the scale there that's happening.
It's absolutely the same order of magnitude for us.
Would it be good to go to the slide now? I think it would be great just to show the audience the landscape. I had my own kind of rudimentary version the first morning where I kind of listed the buckets, but I think this is a great slide that we haven't seen at the event in terms of an executive showing kind of in their view, you did this overnight, right? So this wasn't some sort of like hidden Uber secret, but just it gives you an overview of the applications in the area that you guys are active in. So I thought it would be useful. Maybe we can go through it. I think we have a version here if you could see this. But can we just go maybe briefly through some of these areas in terms of the ones that you're thinking about most, maybe where the most opportunities or challenges are?
I'd actually like to start with the bottom. So when you think about the customer lifecycle, at least these are, I would say, the major buckets, the acquisition, engagement, and customer experience out of the house. But at a foundational layer, one of the big things we need to do as a company to be successful is to really deeply internalize and understand who our customers are and what they care about. This is where we talk about things like segmentation, where we use a lot of auto-clustering techniques. As a simple example, in the Uber world, we have to understand whether people prefer to use us for commute trips or airport trips, and are there like clusters of users which behave in a certain similar way? People who like to drive. So an example of this is parents who will often do a few trips to pick up just before they pick up their kids. A part-time parent will do this, and so we didn't know this from surveys. We actually found this out through first using auto-clustering techniques to figure out if there are groups of behaviors in terms of times people drive, and then surveying these people and saying, oh, why do you drive like this? And we found out there are people who like to do this kind of thing. So there was like almost AI was augmenting the survey process for us to deeply internalize and understand our customer behaviors, which really discovered new segments of populations that we could say, hey, Uber is an interesting application for you because you have these use cases which are similar to what other people are using it for. So there's this like foundational understanding of your customer, which machine learning really helps in because you can use it to do things like clustering based on various parts, how they use your application. Another example of this is one that we were very surprised by. In the engagement side, one of the things we did was around what I call content matching here. But drivers have a plethora of features to make the driving experience good. One of them, for example, is a feature which allows you to say that when I want to go home, take me on a route where I pick up riders, but pointing towards my house. So I'm going to get there by a certain time. Now, this feature is very popular among drivers. But we found out that a set of drivers didn't use this function very much. And we found this out, by the way, using machine learning, where we were like trying to correlate engagement with product usage, feature usage. And the machines basically told us there are a set of users who don't use this feature. And all we did was send an email to them saying, hey, did you know this feature existed? Instantly, it resulted in an uplift in conversion because these people were like, oh, this is so useful. I can use this on my way home. Wow. And again, once I tell it to you like this, you're like, well, there's no AI involved. But it was AI which actually detected that this insight existed, which helped us make those kinds of changes. So this foundational thing, which is like, how do people use your product? Why do people do things? Usually start off as a qualitative survey-based approach. But we found that machine learning type clustering approaches help us understand and help us target our survey so that we better segment our user base. This is, I think, a foundational layer. Now, if you look at all of these other pieces, acquisition, engagement, customer experience, once you have this foundation, you can start doing things like, okay, if I'm going to target people who are dropping their kids off at school for a few extra rides, not to say that this is like a major push or anything like that. In that case, we might say, well, I need to come up with a creative that's targeted towards them rather than sending a generic drive for Uber. You can actually say, no, we're going after this audience, and we can actually create a message tailored to them saying, hey, did you know this is a great way to earn some extra money while you're doing your day-to-day errands? And that plays into our acquisition story. On the engagement story, we can develop features to make sure that they're at their school on time. So these are the kinds of things we try to use that foundational layer of segmentation for. Once you get that, many of these applications derive a lot of benefits from that foundational layer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Image recognition, it's not the first thing that pops to mind. That's the bottom of the acquisition stack there. When you think of Uber, can you talk a little bit about where image recognition is playing?
Yeah, we've been investing quite a bit. So one of the big things we need to worry about when we are acquiring customers is things like, for drivers, they have a lot of documents that they need to upload to us. They send us their driver's license, their car registration, their insurance papers, things of this nature. Guess what? These are all images, and there's a huge amount of friction in the process of becoming a driver. It takes like weeks for somebody to go through the entire paperwork and steps required. So we have been trying to accelerate that process so that people have a friction-free experience when they're onboarding onto Uber. And so image recognition is being used to help identify pieces of information which can then tell the driver. I think this is very common, like banking, for example, where you take a picture of a check and the check is accepted or denied. But it's actually much harder for Uber because the check is something the bank issues. They control exactly what that looks like. For us, there's like each state has its own driver's license. Things change all the time. That's just in the United States. We have to deal across globally with these kinds of problems. So we don't have documents designed for our image recognition. So we have to do a lot of work to do this. But once we do this, now you're suddenly taking a process that can be like, literally we have issues where somebody will accidentally take a picture of their car registration instead of their license and put it in place. And now we can actually detect these and we can auto-sequence these things correctly and say, well, this is a car registration document. I won't ask them for this in the next step because I already have it. I'm going to tell them, hey, you need the driver's license, and show them an example. So these are the kinds of things we're doing. It's a bit harder because of the fact that we have no control over the images that we're getting, but it significantly reduces the friction for people onboarding. That's on the acquisition side. On the engagement side, we are also a traditional e-commerce business. Uber Eats is a traditional e-commerce business, and images play a huge role in this in multiple ways, one of them being that we have to show restaurant menus. If we can actually expedite the process of getting your menus uploaded because you can just give us a photo of your menu and we can scan that out, that's huge value as well. I'm not even going to talk about the self-driving car stuff, which is a whole, it's basically large image recognition problem to a large extent as well. Yeah. But as you can see, it's pervasive for us as a company.
Yeah. Now, and you have your hands in all of that. So Uber Eats, self-driving
at
cars.
least, yeah.
So Uber Eats, a fascinating story. I'm not sure how well it's known, but your CEO mentioned that it's a $6 billion run rate.
Well, if he said
Company.
it, I believe him.
Yeah, May 31st at Code. I think Code wrote it up. But so in terms of bookings, right? And so by contrast, right? And I'm not sure how old is Uber Eats?
I say 3 to 4 years.
3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
So Grubhub, which is the largest, I think, alternative player in terms of food delivery, is it's at 3.8 billion, right? So you've essentially overtaken the leading player out there. How much is AI, things like image recognition behind that explosive growth, right? 200% a year, I think he said.
Oh, it's pretty dramatic. I mean, critical things which, again, if you think about the Uber Eats business, there's a lot of correlation with the traditional business as well. Again, we have a lot of the marketplace problems of like finding somebody to pick up your food, deliver it. So all the things I talked about earlier for how our core marketplace depends on AI apply completely to Uber Eats. One of the big things Uber Eats does very efficiently is you will generally notice that ETAs are much lower for Uber Eats than other services. You will generally notice, we are actually pretty good at estimating time to delivery, for example, and that actually is multiple steps, such as like understanding what the load in a restaurant is and then predicting how long they generally take to generate those items. Being able to efficiently have a person be available to pick up the food exactly at the right time the food is done, because you don't want the person waiting around parked illegally or something like this.
Yeah.
So a lot of that is done through machine learning applications that are trying to accurately estimate these kinds of things. We also do this for even things like choosing which restaurants to onboard into our system. We actually use machine learning to look at a bunch of data around like demographic information and then figure out what are the best places where we need more coverage. And then we start like doing our BD efforts around this as well. So, and then of course, it's an e-commerce business, so recommenders, things of that nature are like part and parcel of the game. You're going to be doing things like recommending the right kind of food. There are various techniques such as multi-arm bandits that are being used to optimize that selection that you see. And that's really important, because if you don't show the right set of images, if people have to scan too much, they lose patience and they lose interest. So that's a really important part of what it takes to get a good delivery business going.
So that's fascinating, right? So you've got a significant part of that business as Uber Eats. How much of the Uber Eats business and maybe your AI applications are informed by your investments already in Uber, ETAs, and in other parts of your business, right? You've been talking about yourself as the Amazon for transportation.
Mm-hmm.
So Uber Eats presumably benefits from some of these other investments.
Absolutely. I think the biggest investment benefit we get is the fact that our marketplace is something we've invested heavily in. You mentioned how quickly we grew our business, that it wasn't a coincidence. It's the fact that we have an established marketplace business which is really good at optimizing who to send where to pick up things. Whether we're picking up people, you're picking up food, there's definitely differences, but the core engine, there's a lot of commonality and a lot of learnings that we can share, which really helped us like kickstart this business and get it going at the speed that we did. And it also is one of the big differentiating capabilities we have, which is that we have things like the ability to do cross-dispatch, where people who don't have a right to do right now can just go drop some food off and they get to earn extra money. That efficiency that we can bring to the marketplace makes our delivery times much faster, makes drivers earn more money. This is just a very self-sustaining loop, and it really makes that business much more successful.
Yeah. One of the interesting things you mentioned earlier was how AI allows you to find certain problems. I'm wondering, are any of these acquisitions, right? You made or huge investments too, right? In Lime.
Yep.
You've got GetAround, right? There's a few other partnerships and investments, acquisitions. So you've got bikes. Right?
Scooters, bikes, all of that stuff.
How much is that being informed by AI? Some of these strategies?
So, I mean, I don't think this will be particularly shocking to anybody here, but if you think about multimodal environments, which is what Dara's been talking about quite a bit, which is that, hey, we want to really be supporting any kind of transportation, and this is exactly what our acquisition strategy shows. There has to be a fundamental belief that this is important for a particular reason, and we have a bunch of data about how people move around the city. Now, if you can actually imagine using this data to effectively create models of how a new modality might impact those transportation patterns, you have a really good sense as to what the potential customer engagement model would look like in these cases. It's a very simple example. If a bunch of people are taking Uber from Caltrain to their offices, and we can see that, and we can see the distance that they have to travel, now you're suddenly much more easily able to look at, hey, I have bikes which could be a replacement for some part of these people. What kind of volume does that represent? So we are able to get insights into the market potential in a way that's probably not as easily accessible to somebody who doesn't have this kind of rich data set from our existing businesses.
Yeah, but I mean, that was one of the big conversations today at the breakfast we had earlier today, where we were all standing around talking about our transportation problems in the morning, right? Where we were all disjointed, right? So there were cars from the city, there was light traffic. Suddenly, the Ubers and Lyfts were taking longer than expected for some reason. So you can see how this concept of context we keep hearing about is extremely relevant for your business. One thing that a lot of people have been talking about over the course of the day and a half, a lot of brands here are experiencing the challenges around bringing their data to a data lake, a common place. Could you talk a little bit about how maybe learnings or maybe things that they can maybe take away, lessons that you've learned about how to do that? Because you're clearly doing it for Uber Eats.
Yep.
You've got a data lake strategy of some sort. Can you talk a little bit about your infrastructure?
So I actually worked at a Hadoop company in the past, Cloudera, and I've worked with many different types of companies in that context. One of the big advantages companies like Uber have is that they're relatively new. So we get to have started from scratch within the last 10 years. So a lot of the technologies that are in place to do things like data lakes, like Hadoop, have been around as long as Uber has been around. So in our case, we have, you mentioned Uber Eats. It's actually, we don't even separate out our data lakes for Uber Eats and Uber. There is one giant data lake which comprises every part of our business, and it's obviously very large scale. And we have built from the start, we have had this concept of a centralized store, with the reason being that these advantages of like Uber Eats and Uber have advantages from each other is much easier to realize when you actually have all your data in a shared location, and you can actually quickly do analyses of the kinds that I'm talking about right here. So from the very start, we've always had this principle. There's going to be one place for all your data. Anybody who needs access, assuming you have the right permissions, can access the entirety of the Uber context, which allows them to make smarter decisions very easily. So we have one giant Hadoop cluster, and that's one of our big things. We have other marts as needed, but if you need it, it is there, and it's in one giant place.
Great. So we got 5 minutes for questions. Just wanted to make sure we open it up to you folks. If you have any questions for Jay, please raise your hand, and please wait for the microphone to come. Anybody? Yeah. Please wait. Thanks.
I know you briefly mentioned autonomous car. You want to talk about that a little bit and the role across the board?
So to be very fair, I provide support to them from a platform perspective, but I don't work closely on that, so I'm not qualified to speak too much on that subject.
So when you're talking, just to stress that, when you're talking about data lake, are you taking all that into your data lake?
There are multiple types of data in that world, including the entirety of what the systems see, as well as like the actual business metrics and things of that nature. So the business metrics come to the same store, but the actual imaging stuff is separate and fairly isolated. It's just a different, we have a huge scale. They have like another order of magnitude scale issues, so it's not really feasible to bring those two environments together.
Interesting. Anybody else?
You had a question?
Yep. Yeah, sir.
What are some problems that you're not currently applying AI to that you'd like to?
It's a good question.
Coming in the future.
Yeah.
So let me think about that for a second. We have a bunch of problems on our roadmap already that we've not started tackling. One of the interesting ones where we've seen potential for huge benefit with some very rudimentary experiments is two areas I'm going to mention. So driver onboarding, I mentioned already. There's like fair amount of complexity in getting people onboarded. I mentioned documents. That's like one of the tactical problems that people have. But when you're signing up to be a driver, you're effectively making a career choice to a large extent. And this is a big deal. So you oftentimes have lots of questions, lots of things to understand about how the Uber business works so that you can make better decisions. Right now, a lot of this is done through documentation, like things that we write, things that we send to them. But we would love to have a much more high-touch experience where people can actually talk to somebody and like understand, have them guide them through that process. To do that effectively, we believe we need AI to really drive that forward. So that's one area which we definitely want to invest in going forward. Then there are other areas such as if you look at countries which are not the United States, there's a lot of cultures where using the app as the way to ask for a ride is actually not default. I mean, it's still common, but there are places where people really like to talk on the phone or do things of that nature, or even text somebody and say, send me a ride to this place. And we would love to be able to do that efficiently. Again, if you're talking about a ride that's $5 and you have to get somebody on the phone for that, that's not really effective without having some kind of automation systems that can make that more efficient. So another area where we'd love to invest going forward. Big areas where we are dramatically investing right now, but you'll see more of that coming out over the next few months would be things like safety. We've been investing heavily and aggressively in that space, but there's just always more and more we would like to do in those spaces. Again, it's a big deal for us, and it's very top of mind.
Mm-hmm. Got time for one more question? Yeah.
How does it work from the execution side? I mean, is it embedded in the teams themselves and the teams come up with the initiatives? They say, okay, for my problem, I'm going to use AI, or is it so complex that you guys have a separate team sitting somewhere?
Yeah, we didn't talk about the
super fun question, one that I'm very passionate about. So we actually have a couple of different models that we have going right now. So each product area has their own data science teams and whatnot. And they can, to the extent that they can solve their own problems, they're empowered to do so. We build platforms, so I'm responsible for Michelangelo, which is our machine learning platform, and it's used across the company. The platforms can be used as self-service, but what we've found is that when you get into these specialized domains, like we do online learning for our ETAs, we do vision, we do NLP, it's not really tractable to have people distributed across the organization who have expertise in each of these areas. So what we have is almost, you can think of it as like a consulting arm, which has experts in NLP who can go in and help a particular area solve their problems. So our AI group is a combination of researchers, applied machine learning folks, and platforms. Then there are the product teams, which have their own data science teams. And in as much as they can do things on their own, they're empowered to do so using our platforms. But where they need additional support, we have the experts on hand to go and help them out. We can go on for much longer than this, but that's the high-level answer to your question. It's not huge. It's in the tens, not in the, it's like a relatively small team. We don't want this to be super large because usually it's a problem if you have a very large consulting team. You want the teams which own the problem to own it as much as possible. But the expertise is where we come in and help out. So it's augmented expertise.
Great. Cool. Unfortunately, we're out of time. We can keep going on this one as well. Jay, thank you very much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Awesome. All this walking backwards and forwards and up the steps. It's a good thing I've got my Fitbit on. I'm getting all these steps in, all these flights of stairs. You are too. I'd like you to go up this flight of stairs and go out to the vendor area where you can get some lunch so that you're not hangry for this afternoon. Please come back here and join us at 1:30 for a continuation of our program. Thank you so much, everybody.